from Shaq not even waiting a second to name Dennis as the worst of all time, to actually starting a brawl with him. Here is all the tea Shaq has given us on Dennis being the worst teammate ever. Starting with the time he blatantly called Rodman out. So recently, he opened up and talked about his career during an episode of The Big Podcast with Shaq. And he was asked about his worst teammate of all time. And let me tell you, he did not hold back one bit. Without a second thought, he threw some serious shade at Dennis Rodman and called him out as his least favorite player to play with on the court. Can you believe that? I mean, we all know that he played with so many players during his Hall of Fame career, but it looks like Rodman left a bad taste in his mouth. According to the Star, Rodman made it really tough for the team's morale, and he just couldn't stand playing with him. Now that's some serious drama right there. I wonder what Rodman's gonna have to say about this. But what actually went down for O'Neal to feel so strongly about Dennis? Well, he just wasn't a good sport. So let me tell you about the worst teammate ever. Apparently he was a real pain to deal with, even though he was a great player. The Star also said it was like trying to herd cats when Rodman was on the team. And get this, the higher-ups would let him get away with anything he wanted. But wait, it gets worse. Before games, Diesel said that they had to be there an hour early. But Rodman would stroll in just 15 minutes before the game started. Not to mention the fact that he would be chowing down on some chicken and rice like he didn't have a care in the world. And if that wasn't bad enough, buckle up. Because while the coaches were trying to talk strategy, Rodman would just hop in the shower, taking a cold one at that. But then out of nowhere, he'd come out and give you 15 to 20 rebounds like it was no big deal. That's just insane. Here's the kicker though. Shaq said that after the game, he wouldn't even take a shower. Instead, he'd be off to the club, partying it up with girls and whatnot. Can you even believe it? Apparently, this all went down back in '98 and '99 when Rodman played 23 games for the Lakers. And the funny thing is, this isn't even an isolated incident where the two were vocal about their issues with each other. Shaq had issues with Rodman's behavior at the NBA 75 celebrations as well. You won't believe what he had to say about Dennis Rodman's behavior at the NBA 75 celebration during All-Star Weekend in Cleveland. The festivities were meant to be a time for basketball legends past and present. You know, to come together and reminisce about old times. But it seems like Rodman missed the memo. According to Shaq, who was all about showing gratitude and humility during the proceedings, Rodman was just being his usual eccentric self. And let me tell you, Diesel did not hold back when he expressed his dismay at his behavior. Not only did Rodman show up wearing a different jacket than the one the league commemorated to the 75th anniversary team, but he also awkwardly inserted himself into a photo with contemporary players. This was including Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Ray Allen, Stephen Curry, and Dwayne Wade. Talk about a lack of situational awareness. Anyway, the former NBA superstar vented about Rodman's behavior, saying he'd never represent his family in such an uncontrollable manner. "My mother doesn't allow that," he said. "I represent Dr. Lucille O'Neal. I don't represent myself, I represent my mama. And the other women in my life, Tahira, Amira, and Miara." He even added that sure, he's going to be silly and do his stuff. When it comes time to be professional though, he will always be professional. It's clear that Shaq thinks Rodman should have shown a little more reverence for the occasion and the people involved. That said, with Rodman you never know what you're going to get. I guess some people are just born to be wild. Oh, and this whole thing isn't limited to NBA 75 celebrations. Dennis Rodman's wild nature has pissed off the Star on other occasions too. I mean, yeah, looks like these two have a history of not getting along, and there have been multiple instances where they've ended up butting heads. One of these issues between them came up during Rodman's short stint with the Los Angeles Lakers. Apparently, he had a problem with the relationship between O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. It's not clear what exactly the issue was, but it's just one of the many conflicts between these two. He had time and time again mentioned how the team and their actions would bother him. In fact, this one time he very blatantly said how there were times he couldn't hear a thing because Shaq and company would always be complaining and he even added that the complaining and whining aren't something that he's used to, because in Chicago, if they'd get mad, they would get mad at themselves and not the world around them. The hot-headed player also added that there'd be times when he would just sit and question what he had gotten himself into. That's how unbearable all of it was for him. And that wasn't even the end of their beef. They've even been in a bunch of physical fights. Yep, you heard that right. Dennis has found himself in murky waters a lot. The real drama happened during a game in December 1996 when Diesel was still playing for the Orlando Magic and Rodman was with the Chicago Bulls. The big Aristotle almost started a brawl that night, which included Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen dragging Rodman to the ground. Can you imagine that? It must have been quite a sight to see. But O'Neal isn't the only one who has an annoyance for Dennis. No, sir. Rodman, too, has time and time again spoken about their feud. This one time, he said he knew why Shaq hated him. The two-time All-Star has claimed that his incredible defensive skills have made him a lot of enemies around the league. This includes the likes of Shaquille O'Neal and Alonzo Mourning. According to Rodman himself, his opponent has a particular problem with him. Apparently, he's the only player who could really hold O'Neal down, even if it was just for a few points here and there. Hey, his words, not mine. I know that's a pretty bold claim, considering Shaq's reputation as one of the most dominant players in NBA history. With that said, Shaq isn't the only one who has a problem with Rodman. Alonzo Mourning is another player who apparently hates him. Rodman says he was able to get in Mourning's head and mess with him mentally, which may have contributed to their animosity toward each other. Of course, it's not uncommon for players to have rivalries and conflicts on the court. Still, it's interesting to hear Rodman's perspective on why these particular players don't like him. I mean, the dude clearly knew how to get under someone's skin. Plus, it's clear that these two basketball giants have never seen eye to eye. Like, who knows what other conflicts they've had in the past, or if they'll have more in the future. But one thing's for sure, where there's Shaq and Dennis, there's bound to be drama. Anyway, that's all I had for you on O'Neal revealing why Dennis was the worst teammate ever.